Bellefontaine, and you're listening to the HomeBuyer's Hour on WCPT AM 820, where the facts matter. And we're going to be talking about a fun and exciting subject about titles and who's on them and everything that comes with the real estate community. But first, I want to introduce Cody Shipp. He's in the studio with us right now. Cody, if you don't mind, give us a rundown on you, your company. Say hi to somebody special, please.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. Cody Shipp with Dreamtown Realty. I've been in real estate on and off 7 years, almost always on, a couple little breaks off. But hi to my fiance. Yep, she has no idea I'm doing this, so she probably won't care. But here we are. Title.
Well, we're going to be getting, this is going to air Saturday morning at 6 o'clock. So for those of you that are awake right now, that's awesome. Everybody else is going to be listening to us on Facebook or YouTube. Patrick, give us an introduction on you, please.
Man, if I am up at 6 a.m. on a Saturday, it's because I'm on the wrong end of that 6 a.m. I haven't been to bed yet.
Oh, my goodness.
But, doesn't happen as often these days as I was accustomed to doing when I was a younger man.
Am I wrong that I get up at 5 in the morning to make coffee and all that?
Every day.
Every day?
Every day.
You too?
Yep.
Oh, boy. Patrick, go ahead, sleepyhead.
Abso-freaking-lutely not. No. Niet. Yeah, I'm Patrick Loftus. I am a lawyer. I am a real estate lawyer. I like to emphasize that because if you dabble in all sorts of different areas, if you're moving around, you're a dabbler. And, I have criticisms for dabblers. I'm not a dabbler. I focus on real estate. That's the thing I care about. If you want to get in touch with me or really the show in general, email show@thehomebuyer'shour.com. That's right. We have our own email. And if you want to get in touch with me specifically, find me on social media, on Instagram at Loftus_law. Some scoundrel got Loftus Law, so I'm stuck with an underscore. What can I do? Or find me on TikTok at Loftus Law. I got that one.
I love it. And Joey Mathews, the VA loan nerd. Give us an introduction on you, please.
Well, hello there. Joey Mathews, NMLS 1330694, the VA Loan Nerd. You can find me on social media as at the VA Loan Nerd or at my website, thevaloannerd.com. That's me in a nutshell.
I love it. So, Joey, what's going on in the financial world? I know we had a holiday. We've had some changes, job reports, a whole bunch of stuff has happened in the last 2 weeks. And some people are saying this is great, and the other people are saying that our country is going to go down the hole, and we're all going to be living out of tents and camping in central Illinois somewhere.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that other than I needed a better insect repellent strategy because I got absolutely devoured this weekend, and no bueno.
No bueno. So what is going on, Joey?
So the big thing going on today is the FOMC, the Federal Open Markets Committee meeting minutes is going to be released at 1 p.m. Central Time.
I think Joey dropped off. Joey, I think maybe needed to update the OS, and so he got shut down. Right. I can only speculate, but I do know he was probably about to reference the what was it? It was the CPI that was going to come out last week, and I was way too focused on the NASCAR race to pay any attention to that. So
it was an exciting time in Chicago. There's no lie on that.
I tell you what, man, I can't remember the last time I saw so much rain though. Tell you what.
That's how we need the rain to get the grass growing. All we got to do is bring NASCAR here to Chicago, and that way we can get our grass growing. So let's get on the subject, and if Joey comes back and joins us, we'll go back to the financial report from him. But today's thing is about titles, basically, and help me understand somebody's name. And I'm going to be completely honest. I'm totally ignorant when it comes to this stuff. And my wife and I were actually starting the whole estate planning process now about putting our property in trust and, trying to get power of attorneys and everything else. Is that where all this is kind of goes to when we're talking about titles and homeowners?
I mean, that's one part of it. As far as title, I mean, so let's kind of break it down, because I don't want to use too much jargon. I feel like people will either tune out or it's just not going to make sense. So when you talk about title, it's a taking title. Really, it just means how are you owning the property. And so if it's just one person, let's say I'm buying a condo, it's pretty simple. I'm going to own the condo. Now, we can make it more complicated. You can start to get a trust involved, okay? So for example, a living trust or land trust. What's a trust? A trust is basically, it's very similar to a corporation the way I see it, in that it's an entity that you set up that doesn't breathe, the blood doesn't flow through its veins, but it is an entity that is separate from the people who are going to be part of it. So you have a settlor. So I think I said that right. That's the person that's setting up the trust. You have a trustee. That's the person that is basically the CEO, so to speak. They're going to be running the affairs of the trust. And you have the beneficiary, and that is the person who's meant to benefit from the trust. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of that. One reason you set up a trust, I mean, there's several reasons why you might consider doing that, but one reason is that because it doesn't have these characteristics of a living entity, is that it doesn't die. So
it doesn't what?
It doesn't die.
Okay.
Right. So it can effectively exist in perpetuity, and because it doesn't die, only the people involved, it's all going to happen. It's going to happen to all of us at some point. It lives past the lifespan of the person who set it up, and thus you're sort of in that way avoiding a big part of what people call probate. So that's a complication. Now, if you have more than one person owning property, say a husband and wife, now you're talking about different things like joint tenancy by the entirety, and what those really mean is probably the most important aspect is the right of survivorship. So if one owner passes, the other owner owns the property without taking any further steps, and in that way, again, we're avoiding probate, avoiding a lot of problems that would come up if you didn't have this thing called the right of survivorship. And it's not, you don't have to do it that way, but certainly in the example of a husband and wife, you would typically want to have the right of survivorship.
How much of a pain in the butt is it when you have to go to probate? Like, what does that process look like? Say they didn't take the proper steps, and they're like, oh, man.
Well, like always, my answer is it depends. So
kind of like the underwear that I wear, right?
Man,
did I say that out loud?
Yeah, you did.
Been completely derailed from my thought process. So it depends, right? So when you talk about having property that is in title, and at least one of the people who is an owner is deceased, there are some there are ways that we can avoid going to probate through some different products that title companies offer. So there's something called a bond in lieu of probate. So if you're able to jump through the necessary hoops, which essentially means that everyone who would have been an heir or a legatee in a will is pulling in the same direction. They all want the same thing, which is to sell the home, let's say. Then you can use certain documents and you pay a little extra for this, but the title company will essentially say, well, this is what would have happened if it would have been probated, so we're going to basically provide insurance in case that thing doesn't happen. And the reason they're willing to do that is because they were provided with the documentation that shows exactly what would have happened. So that's the version of the story that is one where you go, okay, so we avoided that big headache. Mm-hmm. Now, if you have, let's say you have one child of the deceased who is like, nope, I'm not agreeing with my siblings on this. I want to fight it out. I deserve more. And they never say I deserve less. They always say I deserve more. Yeah. Then you're going to have to go to court and make it so that a judge makes that decision. And I can tell you, if going to probate is, I would say, minimum an 18-month experience.
Ouch.
If everything can, happen. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you'll have to wait 18 months to sell the property, but in terms of getting all the necessary pieces in place to file, to get into probate court, and then have someone appointed as the representative, or if there's a will, the executor, that takes time
and money.
And well, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
If we do end up in probate court, that definitely increases my fee, because if I'm handling the probate aspect of it, well, that's not free work.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
well, what kind of things do you get into this topic with buyers? Like, when you're prior to even maybe touring homes? When did this come up?
Yeah, it typically comes up once we're under contract. It depends on the situation that somebody's in. Living in the great state of Illinois, same-sex marriage is typically where it comes up. One person's on the note, one person's on the title, one person's on all of the documents, but one person wants to be on title, or two people want to be on title. What does that mean? How does that transpire and go through? And I think a lot of times the conversation that I have is I defer to somebody that is more well-versed in it, like you. The typical conversation that comes up to me is, I don't want to be on the note because I have bad credit, or I don't have stable job security, whatever it may be. And they say, I would like to have some sort of equity in this house in 20 years once we sell it and we don't get married. What does that look like? And I typically say, Patrick, tell them.
I think that's a legitimate thing, though, isn't it?
Yeah, there's no doubt. If a couple is married, regardless of if it's same sex or opposite sex, I don't know. I don't want to say traditional marriage, because that just sounds, I don't like the way that sounds.
A little archaic,
Yeah. But
we could say heteros, but we have to say it in a derogatory manner, like you heteros,
But that the fact of the marriage actually affects property rights.
Right.
So you've got homestead rights, and what homestead rights is essentially each spouse, regardless of who is on the deed, is going to have property rights in the marital residence. Now, Cody, I think what you were alluding to is, let's say you've got two people who are in a committed long-term relationship, but don't necessarily plan to get married, which can definitely happen.
Yep.
One or both may have kids from a prior relationship. This is where things can get quite tricky. So if you have an intention to build equity in that real estate and have that benefit your children to some extent, rather than strictly your long-term partner, then you may need, or you may want to do something that is a little bit more in depth than just, okay, we're going to own this in joint tenancy. If one of us passes, the other owns it. And that's where these conversations can really get complicated, and you really need to discuss what's the best solution.
And I think I'm going through all that right now. And I remember when I went to real estate school, believe it or not, Cody, I really did go
everybody
to real estate
does.
broker school.
Everybody does.
Well, my whole rationale behind that was I want to learn as much as I can about all the different parts of the real estate transaction.
Yep.
All right, so that's why I went through all that stuff. But I know the joint tenancy stuff, I remember those words kept coming up in there. And, so when you put the offer in on that, are those conversations that you have?
Yeah, it depends. So some clients value input more than others. Some people just want the transaction.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Some people, you do it for me or done for you.
Some people like recommendations, like anything. And some people are like, Cody, I don't care what it takes. Just get me this house. I don't want to talk to anyone. I just want to sign. I want to go to my inspection.
That would be me.
Yeah.
And then I would complain afterwards if it didn't go the way it should have went on my mind during the whole thing.
Yeah.
I'm a bad person.
I'm going to go cry in the corner. Just so many things coming to my mind. Oh, my God, that was the worst situation ever.
Yeah. So I think it depends. Some people like to be involved in the process and want to know every little thing, which is awesome. And some people don't care. They just want to move in on day one and whatever it takes to get there, whether it be a discussion on title or discussion on their loan. It's up to them. I'm as in depth or I guess removed from the process as they want. It's up to them. But sometimes before the contract goes across the board and is signed off on, they want to know. Sometimes they don't. But
now, do you deal mostly with buyers or mostly with sellers?
If you would have asked me that 5 years ago, I would have said buyers. This year, it's been a little listing heavy, which is good because there's nothing to buy.
And that's kind of a normal transition, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
I hear a lot of brokers saying that they start in the rental market, then they start doing sells, and then you get listing. And I remember an old phrase, you list the last. Is that still legitimate?
Yeah, especially in this market.
Especially in this market.
I've got some buyers that are super happy with the market and they just want to sit back and watch and see how it all unfolds. And then some people are submitting offers $75,000 over list and they still don't get the house. So
now that's $75,000. Is that $75,000 over list on $1 million home? Or is that $75,000 list over $150,000 home?
Not the 150, because that usually the math doesn't math on that one. But on a $400,000 or $500,000 house, yeah, sometimes it is $75,000, and sometimes portions of that being cash or in an appraisal waiver, whatever it may be. On a $1 million house,
that's 20%. That's a big number.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. I just had a seller turn down an offer that was $45,000 over list because he had a little bit of seller's remorse, which I get in this market, but at the same time, you might never see that money again. So who knows?
So these buyers, they got to have money in the bank.
I don't know where they're getting this money. The only
thing that's going through my head right now is how does this house appraise out? How do you get a mortgage for something that's that much, 20% over asking price, unless somebody kind of just put a low asking price to encourage this, but it still has to be what the value is. The banks aren't going to take that risk.
I mean, it's something, I've said this for the past 2 years, something is worth what somebody's willing to pay. And typically in that situation, a bank is not going to say, I'm willing to pay for you to take on this loan. So you're either going to have to ask mom or dad or brother or sister or aunt and uncle for that extra money, or you just, I don't know what you had to do to get it. And sometimes I don't want to know, but that money just shows up.
But there's limitations to that too, isn't there?
Yeah, you have to have that money on hand, usually for 2 months. Depends on the lender. Most will require it there in the bank for 2 months. They want to know that it's not coming from extracurriculars or whatever it may be. So,
well, what do you mean by that?
I'll wait till we get a little further into the conversation to go into that. But yeah, I've heard people tell me some interesting stories where I was like, I didn't hear this and I don't want to hear this. So thank you.
That's what's one of the very useful things about confidentiality is that I'm really not even allowed to share that with anyone else. So you tell me all your most horrible secrets. Actually, don't. I don't want to know all the secrets.
I will say, maybe you guys have seen this. The things that people confide in you during this 2 month to month long transaction is wild. Wild.
Indeed. Well, and I would say that that really is, it reflects kind of the level of the depth, I suppose, of how that relationship develops. It's buying a home that you're going to live in is it can involve some fairly intimate details. I mean, you're literally saying to somebody, tell me the the ideal scenario for what your living situation is going to be for the foreseeable future. Yeah. And that is going to involve some level of you're going to need to reveal some things to to the people that are helping you find that situation.
I think one of the things that has become more of a conversation as I start to progress through real estate and past clients become future clients for 5 to 10 years is, are you planning this purchase for 5 years, 3 years, 2 years, 10 years? And as they start to think about, okay, well, we're going to have 5 kids in 5 years, whatever it may be. Okay, well, are you going to start a trust? How are you going to take this over? Do you guys have next steps? By no means am I a financial advisor, but if this is a piece of your portfolio and life, however you look at it, you need to start treating it that way and make sure that you're covered,
Yeah, and I think there's a couple things that come to mind in terms of conversations that really should be taking place with, let's just say with a buyer, but even a seller as well. I can't tell you how many times a property is in trust, for example, and nobody really noticed it until I go and look up the last deed. And it's fine. I can sort that out in attorney review. It's important to do that. That's a detail I think that can get overlooked as far as, do you have the right seller on this contract? You have to. I mean, there's just no two ways about that, and the case law bears that out. But another thing that I think gets overlooked is the conversation with somebody who is buying, who has a trust, and they go through the whole process, and you get to the very end and they go, well, yeah, I have a living trust, and the house I own right now is in that trust, but we have the whole loan has been underwritten, and we're the day of closing, and this revelation is made, and you go, well, dearie me, we've got more work to do after closing, because once this deed gets recorded, we're going to have to then convey it into your trust. Otherwise, your estate plan is basically been gutted, because that's a big part of the estate plan is
right.
making sure that your primary residence is owned by that trust. And that gets overlooked as well, because 6 weeks later, when the deed comes back with the recorder stamp, and you reach out to the client, you go, hey, it's time to do the quitclaim deed, and it's crickets, because they're on to the next thing. You're like, man, that's not great. I can't force them to do it, and they're annoyed that they're going to have to pay me more money to deal with that. But those are conversations, especially I think, and I wish Joey were here, because I would tell him what he needs to be doing, which I'm sure he would love to hear. But that's a conversation that a lender really must have, I think, with a client. One is, if you've got one of two, if you've got two people on a contract and only one is applying for the loan, that conversation needs to be had. How is this meant to be in terms of the ownership? And number two, do you have a trust? And should you be having a conversation with the attorney that prepared the trust? The answer is yes. Just all this stuff seems to get overlooked quite often.
What do you do? And Cody, maybe you know this. If you don't, I'm sure Patrick does. But you write an offer, all right? And you assume that the sellers of the house, you put their name, that they're the sellers. Then you find out that there's a trust. Is that offer legitimate, or does everything need to be torn apart and redone again?
Yeah, so I've never run into it, to be honest. Patrick may have. I would imagine that on my end, it does change things a little bit. So new listing agreement would need to be signed. Whoever is the executor of the trust is going to have to be involved, because I just had this happen a couple weeks ago with a colleague of mine who got to the closing table, or got 2 days away from closing, and found out that the property was in a trust, and one of the people in the trust placed a lien.
That would aggravate me.
Yeah.
That would aggravate the daylights out of me.
They got 2 days away from.
If I was involved in that one, you're like, you're telling me now?
Well,
did we not know this 2 months ago or a month ago?
It was a strategic move by the person who placed the lien on the property, because essentially they leveraged that to say, I want more money. I want to amend the trust. I want to amend the way that the proceeds are cashed out, which at that point you can't be. I'm not involved aside from selling the home, but at that point you've got to say, like, tip of the hat for the strategic move. Tip of the hat? Well, yeah. I mean,
Please tell me you're speaking sarcasm right now.
Yeah, I am.
Good.
I am. I mean, at that point, though, it's family members that are pitting themselves against each other, and it was a strategic move that annoyed everybody, but they knew what they were doing. They did.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, hey, well played in terms of trying to maximize the benefit. They're playing chess while the others are playing checkers, and
I'm pretty good at checkers. So.
Well, it's those family dynamics. They really change the game in terms of who is being treated fairly, and there's so much more at play than just this one little isolated situation. These are people that have spent their entire lives together, have a whole bucket load of shared trauma, from all over, and it's like, in a vacuum, you can certainly be critical of someone that leveraged something that you think to yourself, that wasn't fair play. And so, what's fair? And they might have. I'm sure they have a different story. They might be a wrong'un who just is out there looking for simply what's best for them, and everyone else be darned. But
My
also,
brain doesn't work that way.
Well, sure, because you're
I'm just not wired like
Right.
that.
the trauma that you experienced didn't lead you to have a tremendous amount of resentment for your siblings or whatever it is. And I get along quite well with my sister, and we would, I think, not have too much trouble with a situation that might present itself like what you're describing. However, I can see, I certainly know people quite well who would not be able to do, almost anything if it involved coming to some sort of agreement with their sibling.
That is amazing. I look at, my wife's family dynamic. She has her father, her mother are still alive, which is fantastic, and they're just a pleasure to be around. And then her two brothers, and everybody gets along so well. Even when there's a problem, they have the ability to talk everything out and come to a amicable solution. It's just the waiting, doing this trusting and waiting to, what'd you say, 2 days?
2 days before. Yeah.
And Patrick, what do you do? How do you solve that?
Well, the leverage there and the reason it's quite clever is you've got really two situations that are presenting themselves. One is that you have the relationship with the seller and the buyer, and you don't want to sour that relationship. You don't want the buyer to walk away. Generally speaking, if you're 2 days before closing, you've made a lot of plans and changes and different things.
Yeah.
And so has the buyer. And if you are unable to meet your obligations under the contract, then that's on you. That's a problem that you are going to have vis-a-vis the buyer. And so then the question becomes, how do you resolve the dispute with this, the person that placed the lien? And this is a situation where, regardless of who's right and wrong, so to speak, in the situation, the existential issue of possibly being wrong vis-a-vis you and the buyer, being right in the situation between you and the person who placed the lien is really can be secondary. And how do you resolve it? You're probably going to have to give that person something more than what you thought they deserved, and you're not going to like it.
No.
And these things, they happen sometimes where you go, look, sometimes you're presented with two bad options, and so you've got to pick your poison, so to speak. And I'm not saying that anyone's...
Say that. When my son was growing up and he wanted to do something, and he's listening right now, I would always give him two bad options. You choose. Do you want to be grounded for a week, or do you want to come home at the right time?
Well,
yeah.
There's there's
You're
a cycle.
Smoke this whole pack of cigarettes. P.S. I'm here. I just figured out I have a mute button.
What are you
on my
laughing at?
keyboard.
Wait, Joey, hold up. Did you mute yourself and you finally figured out how to unmute?
Dude.
Oh.
No. So
Oh my
I've
goodness.
never,
Well, welcome
I've
back,
never
Joey.
used my work.
Oh,
I've never
he's back
used my
muted.
work computer for this, and for the longest time, I'm trying to figure out why you guys can't hear me. There's literally a button on my keyboard for muting myself, and I've been muted this whole time. I'm such an a-hole. I love it.
My wife would say pathetic because English is her second language, and they don't have a th in her native language. So in our household, it is called pathetic. So Joey, I was talking whatever. I don't know what I was saying. I think I thought I heard that the CPI number was it Friday? It was supposed to come out, and isn't that something that's important on some level?
CPI not coming out yet. No.
Oh, yeah.
I don't have my economic calendar open on my wife's computer.
What came out Friday? Something came out Friday. Come on.
Actually. This past Friday?
Yeah.
Jobs.
Jobs.
Yeah, and there was a market overreaction for the jobs, in my opinion, because it came in, I think it was 4K heavy, which is, it's a pittance.
Yeah, that'll get readjusted.
240. Yeah, absolutely. It comes out every week, There's seasonal adjustments, and non-farm payrolls comes out on Friday, or, oh my gosh, is it tomorrow or Friday? Anyway, non-farm payrolls comes out this week, and that's going to have a bigger impact anyway. But it's just jobless claims, continuing jobless claims, initial jobless claims, all the jobless claims, all that fun stuff.
Joey, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you recall that number?
I'm pulling up economic calendar.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
So Joey, while you're doing that, let me just burden you with more thoughts, because now that you're back, we're just gonna hammer you. Do you have any like process, or is it part of your process to find out how someone is intending to hold title? Especially where you've got, say, a married person who is applying without their spouse for a loan. Yeah, generally speaking, when someone comes to me and they go, well, I want to add my fiance to the contract, or I want to, add this or whatever, I go, you need to have a conversation with your lender right away, so that when they underwrite the loan, they know what the intention is. Because if we try to alter that deed at closing, they're not gonna allow it. We won't be able to fund that loan, and you're gonna have to do something later on, possibly violate the due on sale clause, which that's another conversation. But
Quick claim.
well, you're not really supposed to do that, but people do that. So right, I asked you a question, and then I proceeded to ramble on for another 90 seconds. But is that part of your process to kind of sort through that with people?
So we talk about how they're going to hold title, and this is more important, if you can believe it, on VA loans, for me, especially if someone's engaged. Because if you are buying and you plan to have your fiance on the title with a VA loan, you can't do that. We just can't do that, right? The VA will not allow it. So wait until you're married, or get married, courthouse wedding. I can do that for you. I got a guy.
Isn't there a way like a? I love it. Isn't there a way like a quick claim? But I don't want to answer that. We're running a little late on time. So if you don't mind, I'd like to go around the horn. Joey, how do they get hold of you if they have questions on this?
Well, you can find me at show at the HomeBuyer's. You can catch me on social media as at the VA Loan Nerd. You could also go to my website, thevaloannerd.com. Call or text at 630-235-2405.
There it is.
Nice. And Patrick, how do they get hold of you?
Show at thehomebuyer'shour.com.
I think I need to throw that email up there too.
And that's at .com. Find me on social media at Loftus_law on Insta. If you want to find me on TikTok, it's at LoftusLaw.
And Cody, how about you?
Yeah, I guess I'll carry it through. Ship Homes at Facebook. I don't think anybody uses it. LinkedIn. Instagram.
I think the only thing I do go on is Facebook now. That's where all the old people go.
Okay, boomer.
All right.
Yeah. No, you hit it right on the money. I am a boomer. I'm proud of it.
Hey.
You young whippersnappers.
There you go.
But
There
keep
you
going.
go. Yeah.
What phone numbers?
Yeah.
Give me all the concepts.
Phone number 312-450-0665.
One more time slower, please.
312-450-0665.
I mean, estate planning talk would be great for Facebook.
Yeah,
I'm
people
sure
are
it
going to
would
love
be.
it.
Everybody would have an opinion, and it would definitely be voiced. My name is Charlie Bellefontaine, and I own Chicagoland Home Inspectors. Our website is www.thehomeinspectors.com, and we also own Home Inspection University of Illinois, so that's HIUIL.com. If you're interested in joining the home inspection profession, please let us know. We'll do everything that we can to help. And I forgot already what we were talking about. This is my
Title.
Short-term memory
Title.
stuff like
It's okay.
that, going back to title stuff.
Yeah, we were talking to Joey about what his, what the part, whether he's got something in his process when it comes to, asking people if they, how they want to hold title. And where we left off, if I recall correctly, is Joey was talking about with VA loans. And I suppose it's understandable why the rule is in place that you got to be married in order to have both people on title.
But can't they come back with just a quick claim deed afterwards?
They can.
Patrick was bringing up the dual. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, so the form mortgage that is used in a conventional loan has something called a due on sale clause, which means that if you convey the property, you've got to pay off the loan. Now, people do convey property without paying off the loan. Mortgage companies generally are not monitoring that sort of thing. Now, there's one exception. Even though the due on sale clause is there, you can convey title to a self-settled trust. So if you are conveying title to a land trust, which I haven't talked about that yet, or a living trust, federal law says that you are not violating a due on sale clause. You're allowed to do that.
And I think that's what we're going through now is a land trust when I put my house in a trust, or is that... And I know these are dumb
Sure.
questions.
No,
I just don't know.
they're good questions.
All right.
It's not a dumb question, because just because I know what that stuff is doesn't mean that everyone else is meant to know what that stuff means. A land trust is a very specific kind of trust, and it is for owning real estate. And it is a kind of a quick and dirty way to do some estate planning. For a lot of people, their only substantially valuable asset that doesn't have a beneficiary, meaning your life insurance policy has a beneficiary that's going to flow outside of your estate. If you've got a transfer on death or a joint bank account, that's going to transfer outside of an estate. If most people, when you look at it, and by the way, PSA here, every couple of years you really need to be checking on who are the beneficiaries of your various your 401k, your life insurance. Make sure that your bank account
Life changes.
Yeah.
Indeed. So it's absolutely, at a bare minimum, every couple of years, just double check that is what you want it to be, because you don't know when a bus is going to come through your living room.
I've used that thing all the times, and it's just even like in our business, I'm looking for plans of succession. What is going to happen if I get hit by a bus?
Yeah.
All right. I mean, it's when we're dealing with the home inspection company, usually it's the one person's reputation that gets built up. And you could tell me this too, Cody. When I ask you who you work with as far as home inspectors, usually I get a name. I don't get a company.
Yeah.
All right. And whereas I'm trying to build a company that is consistent so that everybody kind of does the same thing, and you get more of a McDonald's, not to advertise with them, but no matter where you go, it's going to be the same thing. Say again?
Happy birthday,
Grimace.
Happy birthday, Grimace.
If you're on TikTok, that whole thing takes on a different meaning.
I am lost because obviously I'm not on TikTok.
Again, this will be one of the 6 videos I have to send out around because I've made too many niche pop culture references during the show. So
get to the boomer stuff, and don't make me come back to you with the responsibility that all us boomers really take on and hold up for.
Charlie, I reckon you remember when the McDonald's signs said, however many billion, and when I was a kid. They literally had a counter. It would be like, 4 billion served. And when that thing would tick over to 5 billion, wow, that's a big deal.
I remember that.
Well, I remember the sad thing is, and when they started doing million, and I believe I can remember 100,000. All right. I've been on this damn earth too long. So,
dozens and dozens served.
Dozens and dozens served. So, no lie on that.
Just to finish, so that's land trust, right? So an Illinois land trust is kind of a thing it's known about. It's quite useful when you're talking about having real estate. If you set it up the right way, it can be quite effective as an estate planning device. Now, what you're talking about with a more comprehensive trust is something that we generally refer to as a living trust. And a living trust can basically own just about anything. So it will own your real estate. It will own, whatever you've got. And then the trust document says this is what's meant to happen to it when the initial beneficiaries are no longer with us.
I've got a question, actually. Do we have time?
Yeah, you got all the time in the world.
Wonderful.
I just wanted to get our name and number out there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Patrick, more so a question for you. I get asked this all the time. Should every property be put into a trust at any time, any person? Yes, no, maybe so.
Yeah, probably not. Look, as far as estate planning for, let's say, a married couple, tenancy by the entirety is really going to be, in the vast majority of circumstances, just fine. Okay. Because, inevitably, there's exceptions, of course. One spouse is going to leave us before the other will. And that spouse won't have any complications because of that thing I referenced earlier, the right of survivorship. So that for most people, that's going to be sufficient. And this is the kind of conversations I have with people as far as, they go, well, what should I be doing estate planning wise? And I'll ask them some questions. And, if it turns out that most of their assets are going to be something that is going to flow outside of an estate, I'll say, a simple will's probably going to do just fine for you. Once they start talking about, well, I've got this, I've got that, I've got this other thing, I've got, a couple different marriages that produce, children. I go, yeah, you're now in living trust territory. I own a business. I have specific things that I want to have happen. The trust is really the only way a deceased person can maintain control over their assets.
Which I like. Well, I think they should. Yeah. I mean, I heard of people contesting wills. Can you contest a trust?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean,
you're going to contest somebody's dying wish, really. Really. You're going to contest somebody's dying wish.
Yeah, because
I've heard of it. That's why I'm asking.
Listen, I'll give you an example. So let's say child one is, taking care of an adult who is, let's say, for the past 5 years, this adult, they were 85 and then they finally passed at 90. Well, 6 months prior, I mean, it's pretty clear that they don't know what is what, and things are going downhill, and that primary caregiver child feels some kind of way about the other child that's out traveling the world and having a good old time. And they see
they don't need it. I need it.
Well, they see that the trust document is it's 50-50 or whatever. You distribute it equally, and they go, that ain't fair. So they draw up something else that says that trust is no longer, and this is now the trust, and it goes 90-10, and they just just sign that, and that's just giving one example of where sure. I mean Well, was it their dying wish? That really is what it would boil down to at that point. And if the kids can't work it out, then that's what courts are for.
Someone else is going to make the decision if you can't make it, right?
That is ultimately what a court is meant to do. And I can tell you, for those of you out there that think, it's going to be decided fairly. You don't know what is in that judge's mind. You don't know what their background is. You don't know what any of those jurors, what their backgrounds are. And what they deem to be fair is almost certainly going to be something other than what you think is fair.
Yeah.
Or the other person thinks is fair.
But isn't that a good agreement when everybody's upset?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, if a judge hands something down and it's just like, wow, why do we have appeals courts? Because judges get it wrong sometimes.
Yeah.
Why do we have the Supreme Court? I'm not going to get into that.
Yeah, I think
it goes to the final decision. You got to stop somewhere.
Well, yeah, and so, it's going to court is no fun for anyone. Even the lawyers. Even
at least they're getting paid to go to court.
You get paid on jury duty.
Say again?
You get paid on jury duty.
On jury duty, yeah. What is that?
$17.50. I got picked for a jury a few years ago, and I just got another summons for crying out loud. Now I'm going to get myself in trouble, but here's a little dirty trick. So,
gosh,
I got picked for a jury, right? I was 4 days, and I'm the only revenue generating thing in the business. That was a tough one. $17.50. It's not what my going rate is, but that's what it was. I did my duty, and then they told me I was an alternate, and I was really upset.
Yeah, because you're not even having fun at that point. You're just sitting there waiting, just waiting.
It was a fascinating experience. So I sat in the jury box. I got to hear all the testimony. Watched 4 very talented lawyers really do one heck of a job. The thing is, because I've handled criminal cases before, I could kind of suss out what what was sort of in the background of this whole thing. And, I didn't want to go, and didn't want to, not supposed to, not allowed to look up anything before it's all said and done. But, I kind of had it nailed as I'm sitting there in the jury box trying to figure out what's really going on here.
So I'm going to jinx myself right now. I haven't been on jury duty for over 30 years.
Yeah, well,
and I am registered to vote and stuff like that. Bring it on, tough guys.
You done jinxed yourself. So the last time I got a jury duty summons, I was running late. And what happened was, so I'm standing in line waiting to get admitted to the jury room over at the Daily Center, and they go, well, we hit our cap. It's COVID, and we have a limit how many people we come in. Oh. You all get credit for showing up, but you're all dismissed. I was just like,
oh, darn.
So I will definitely be 15 minutes late when the day comes for my, this next jury summons. I've probably just. I hope no one important hears that.
Yeah.
It'll be a big trouble.
I remember I did get picked for a case, and it was a lady that got hit by a bus. One of our Chicago Transit Authority buses and that. And while they were asking the questions and everything else, she just started crying, like really loud and everything else, and making kind of a scene. And then all of a sudden you hear the word sidebar and blah, blah, blah. And then the next thing, okay, all jurors are dismissed.
Yeah.
And then you're free to go. And I'm like, oh, yay, And don't get me wrong, I'm all for doing civic duty, and I know I should be proud of all doing all that stuff. But you hit it on the head. There's people that rely, on you, and taking that day away is not always easy.
No, I mean it was a tough one. Ultimately, for me, it's a rare thing to be a lawyer who actually gets picked. And when they're going through, it's called voir dire, and anyone who speaks French just like had a aneurysm having me pronounce it that way.
And I think that's the same for firemen and policemen too.
I do.
So.
So
voir dire is basically where you ask the potential jurors questions to determine if there's any reason that you should ask them to be excluded. And they asked me, okay, so you're a lawyer. Have you ever handled criminal cases? Yes, I have. And I was, I was really trying to get out of it. So I was like, as a matter of fact, I have handled cases on the defense side in this very courthouse, just pouring it on thick. Next thing I know, I'm sitting in a jury box going, what happened?
I did everything I could.
Why am I here? I basically just screamed you don't want me on this jury. Anything short of I disagree with our drug laws, which I do disagree with our drug laws, but that is another tangent that I've already dragged this.
This title conversation is doing really good.
Yeah,
jury duty talk on the HomeBuyer's Hour, just what everyone tuned in for.
Exactly.
Question for you guys, actually. So segueing off of your lawyer watching lawyers, yeah. Do you look at other lawyers and or other home inspectors and think like, man, you're either doing a great job right now, or like, buddy, you gotta be better? Because I have a personal feeling on realtors.
I'll jump in on
you can't
on a
ask
little
that
bit of that. I
question
don't
with
see
10 minutes left.
I don't see other home inspection reports.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
It's not that they're going to be made public or anything else like that. Once in a while, I'll get a complaint, and all that does is turn me prejudice against other home inspectors, because it's kind of like being a policeman. I had a lot of great cop friends, right?
Okay.
But every time they have to do business with somebody in their profession, they're always doing business with the person who's in trouble. It's a bad person, so they become prejudiced in that fashion. And I think that's the same thing. Anytime I hear of other home inspection reports that comes to me, my jaw drops. I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I think it's bad. But I look at the reputation. Reviews to me, I think, I'll give the. What you guys are called, the millennials or something like that. I'll give you guys credit for all that, because you brought in all the social media, and it gives good justification from a third person to see whether or not somebody's legit.
Yeah.
Right? The only problem with that is that, just the human nature. Angry people, you want to motivate someone to take action and do something, piss them off. All right, you get an angry person, and they're going to want to do something negative.
Yeah.
All right, happy people are kind of content, and they don't really take too much action.
I'm a lawyer. I never piss people off.
You piss them off by breathing. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, that's true. To answer your question, gosh, we don't have enough time. I'll try to be brief. I'm never brief. So there's a couple of things that kind of grind my gears, so to speak. One is when I get a letter, and it's clearly someone's form, which is fine. I use forms. Forms are essential, I think, to just about any lawyer's practice. But when you send your form letter out and it's clearly not tailored to this contract, if you're saying something, if the property is in Palatine and you're talking about transfer stamps or a zoning certificate, and it's clearly not something that's meant for a Chicago property or for somewhere else. Cook County has a zoning cert. That tells me that your attention to detail is lacking. Whether that's because you're super busy or because whatever you think real estate transactions are,
or you're just bad.
Or that too.
And the sad thing is, and that's one of the reasons why I like talking about this stuff here, because at least we get people to listen.
Yep.
Is that the consumer really doesn't know what's expected and what should or should not be.
Yeah. So that's one thing, and there's really two elements to that. One is I can kind of gauge where you're at in terms of real estate transactions, but then I now have to explain to the client why this is there and what we're going to do about it. And the answer is we're just going to say it's not applicable. The other one that makes me crazy is when you get an attorney review letter that's like 36 paragraphs long and repeats, by and large, big portions of the contract, where it's like you're not drafting a contract, you are drafting possible modifications to a contract. If it's already in the contract, it doesn't need to be in your letter, and that is such a common thing. And I'm just like, no need. Yep. If the lawyer's email address is on page 13, you don't need to put in your attorney review letter that notice provided via email is sufficient notice. It already says it in the notice provision. So just one example. I could go on, and Charlie's like,
well, we are running out of time a little bit, so we're going to use the last couple minutes, if you don't mind, Patrick. Give us your contact information if somebody has questions on this.
show@thehomebuyershour.com. Come on, give it to me. Your emails, not other stuff. Find me on Insta, Loftus_law, LOF like Frank, T like Tom, US like Sam. Find me on TikTok at Loftus Law.
Sounds good. Joey, how about you?
Hey, I don't know if you can hear me or not because I have a Microsoft Teams call coming in that I'm ignoring.
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
If you need to find me, you can find me at thevaloannerd.com. You could follow my social medias as @thevaloannerd. Call or text me at 630-235-2405 or email me at show@thehomebuyer'shour.com.
And Cody, you have a team, right? You don't work alone, do you?
Yeah, so I've got a mentor that I've been with for 6 years here in Chicago, and then I've got a bunch of agents that have been on the team for anywhere between 2 and 4 years that I have that assist me when I'm double booked, triple booked, quadruple booked. So
how big is that team?
Team of 10. Team of 10 in total with an assistant that saves all of our lives.
Mm-hmm. No, that's enough to keep everybody hopping, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so.
I get it. And what about a phone number and email to get hold of you?
Yeah, so phone number 312-450-0665, and email is Cody, CODY, @dreamtown.com.
Sounds good. And I want to give a special thank you to Devin Tingle. He's our producer. And I had a few issues going on today, so you saw me jumping on and off screen, but Devin fixed everything. My name is Charlie Bellefontaine. I own Chicagoland Home Inspectors. Our website is www.thehomeinspectors.com, and our phone number is 312-544-9180. Thank you for listening. My name is Charlie, and I am out.